Advanced Financial Modeling, Topic 9, Forecasting Financial Statements, Free Cash Flows, and Stock Valuation. Learning Objective number 6. We're going to value stocks using the dividend discount model. So we're looking at Walmart right now. Walmart at the day I was doing this valuation was selling for $109.40. So that's the market price trading on the exchange. What we're going to try to do is get our estimate of the price, also called the intrinsic value or fundamental value. And we're going to use the concept of the dividend discount model, that the present value of all dividends is equal to the value of the stock and dividends per share. The dividend that the Walmart recently paid is $2.12. I got that from Yahoo Finance on the day of this valuation. And if I look at the Wall Street growth estimates of earnings, it looks like 3.69% per year for the next 5 years. And if we assume that payout is constant, we can assume that maybe dividends grow also at 3.69%. So that dividend discount model just states that the present value of perpetuity of dividends is equal to the value of the stock, and that's dividends per share. So you can just say the value of the stock at time period 0 is the sum of each dividend at time period t divided by 1 plus r to the t, discounting each dividend. To get the dividends in the future, you're going to estimate the growth of dividends. We're going to look at 3 different possible scenarios for growth of dividends. So I've looked at dividends per share and years. If you assume the dividend stays exactly equal to current dollar value, we call that a zero growth dividend. If we say that dividends grow at a constant rate, we say that's a constant growth dividend. And to value these two, for the no growth, we just say the value of the stock today, we'll call it P0, is the most recent dividend over the discount rate. If you're doing a constant growth dividend, the value today, P0, is the estimated dividend over R minus G, again, where R is the discount rate, the rate of return you require for the investment, and G is the constant growth dividend. Or you can have a multi-stage growth model, or differential growth, where it grows at one rate, usually higher, and then one rate into perpetuity. So you have this inner abnormal growth period, meaning kind of long-term, it's growing faster than its long-term average, and then a long-term average growth rate. So let's look at 3 scenarios for Walmart. If let's assume it just paid $2.12 a share. If I want to use a constant growth model, I would just take $2.12. That would be last period's dividend and next period's dividend and so on, and just divide by a discount rate, we'll call it 6%. And we get $35.33. If you believed in this model and the actual stock price was $109, you'd say, well, Walmart is grossly overvalued, you shouldn't buy it. But then what if we use the 3.69% from the Wall Street analyst's next 5 years estimate? Well, in that case, we can take the $2.12 that was just paid, or about to be paid, and divide it by 0.06 minus 0.0369. This is the assumption that next period's dividend will be $2.12. If you assume that last period's was $2.12, you would then multiply this at 1.0369. Again, it's just the assumption. If this is last period's dividend, multiplying times 1.0369 would be the first dividend you receive. If 212 is the forecasted next dividend, I would just take 212 over 0.6 over 369. When I do that, I get $91.77. Let's go ahead and do that. And it looks like we made the assumption that 212 was actually the next period's dividend. So I didn't have to grow it here. So let's go on here to this model, and I could just take 212 divided by 6%, which is that discount rate, minus the growth rate, and I get 91.77. When I do that, I still get a value that's less than the market price. So we say that, well, based on this assumption and model, it's just a little overvalued. I think it's worth 91.77. Again, that's the intrinsic value or fundamental value, and its market price is 109. However, we can't make the assumption that growth of dividends can grow faster than the growth of the overall economy. So you can think about it this way. If the overall economy is growing less than 3.69%, and Walmart's growing at 3.69%, sometime out in the future, could be 100 or 1,000 years away, Walmart actually exceeds this the size of the overall economy. So you got to make the assumption that that long-term perpetual growth rate used for the final valuation of a stock is less than the long-term growth rate of the economy. One proxy of the long-term growth rate of the economy is the 30-year Treasury rate. At the time of this valuation, that was 2.4%. So you can say that an estimate for the long-term growth of the economy is 2.4. So I can't make the assumption of 3.69 forever. What I can do, however, is do this model where I use the 3.69% growth for the first 5 years, years 2 through 5. Then I can, 2 through 6. Then I can use a 2.4% growth rate for the rest of the years. So actually, it looks like I use 2 through 5 is the 3.69, and then 6 through infinity is going to use the 2.4. Let's see how we can value the stock using that model and see what the valuation is. So again, we just assume that this stock, in this case, we can just make the assumption that it just paid a dividend of $2.12. If that's a future dividend, I would just put it right here. Then that dividend grows at 1 plus that abnormally high growth rate. I'm going to anchor that. So it's going to go, the dividends are going to go from 212 to 220. But for the final, for that 6 year, I'm going to actually use a 2.4% growth rate. I'll just type it in there. And I get 251. So in this model, it's a little bit different than the last model. We'll just assume that, it says period 1 dividend. So this is the dividend received 1 year from now is 212. That's the same as the last model. And then 2 years from now, it grows by 369, and so on. And then since this is a growth estimates for years 1 through 5, I'm just going to use the long-term growth of the economy, 2.4% for the valuation of dividends in year 6. So let's take the present value of these dividends. I can just take dividend divided by 1 plus the discount rate. I'll anchor that discount rate to the 1 power. Copy that down. So now I have the present value of dividends from year 1 through 6. However, we're going to make the assumption that the company lives forever, or at least pays dividends forever. So what do? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that last dividend, that's that period 6 dividend, and multiply that times 1.024. When I do that, that is now the period 7 dividend. That's the dividend that's going to be received 7 years from now. I'll then divide that by R minus G, which is my 6% minus my 0.024%. Now, if I just hit enter, if I just have the year 7 dividend, which is the year 6 dividend times 1 plus the perpetual, we'll call that the perpetual growth rate. And if I divide it by the discount rate minus perpetual growth rate, what this formula gives me, this growth, infinite growth model, perpetuity model, it gives me the valuation in the year before that dividend. So this is actually how much I would pay 6 years from now for a dividend that starts from 7 to infinity. So the rest of these are in present value terms, right? They're all discounted back to today. So what I need to do is discount that back at 1 plus the discount rate raised to the 6th power. Remember, because this is a year 7 dividend divided by R minus G gives me the value in year 6. Then I'll discount it back 6 more years. Now I can just sum up all those and say, well, based on this model, probably a little more realistic, it's worth $61.66. Walmart was selling for $109, so therefore Walmart is overvalued. So this is the dividend discount model. In the next model, we'll talk about value in stocks using free cash flows and not dividends.